Yes, we're back, and we have a special guest with us. We have a special guest who I am going to hype up well. So well. But first, friends, best way to enter everything in life. We are going to be talking about Batman Forever, 1995. Of course, if you had just listened to our previous segment here, we are going to announce which 3 films from 1962 we are going to be watching next week.
That's
exciting. End of this segment, you'll hear the films that will be on our next podcast. I believe all of them are streamable for free, so stick around so you can catch up and watch live with us next week. But first, we have to get to Batman Forever, 1995. This is where Tim Burton said, no, I'll produce. I just did 2 pretty successful Batman films with Michael Keaton. Let's let Joel Schumacher take over. Oh, Michael Keaton doesn't want to work with Joel Schumacher. Okay, Val Kilmer is in. Who's the biggest star in the world right now? Jim Carrey. Let's get him to be Edward Nygma. Who else do we got? Oh, this is right after The Fugitive with Tommy Lee Jones. Let's get Tommy Lee Jones. Oh, they don't like working together? Doesn't matter, people. We are talking about Batman Forever. Right now, here are the numbers. Wait. These are the numbers. On Rotten Tomatoes, Batman Forever, 39% tomato meter. But don't worry, because the audience score is lower. It is 32% on Rotten Tomatoes. On IMDb, it's at 5.4, which I think might be generous. All right, Batman Forever, Joel Schumacher, Val Kilmer. John,
a drink during the
while
intro?
I drank, go ahead and introduce our guest.
All right, yeah. So before we talk about Batman Forever, I just want to give a little shout out. Our guest name is Jeff Ronan. He is the co-host of the podcast, the movie podcast, and Almost Starring. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that pod, dude? Welcome to the love of cinema, first of all.
So thrilled.
Cheers.
Thrilled.
You know what? Dave, buzzing.
I'm drinking.
It's your rite of passage.
Oh my God, my first buzz. I'm so thrilled. So glad. I'm loving being here on the Love of Cinema, guys. And Almost Starring is a podcast I run with my wife, Amy Jo Jackson, where each week we take a film, break down all the actors who almost starred, all the actors who were almost cast, and what could have been for better and sometimes for hilariously worse. And a wide batch of films. Oh yes, Jeff.
Can I throw something at you? Okay, so we just talked about Apollo 13. Tom Hanks's career is thanks to other people turning down roles. True or false?
I mean, you could argue a lot of people's careers are like that. I mean, all the people, we haven't done Big yet, but offhand, I know that Robert De Niro turned down Big, and that's what really, got Tom Hanks that first Oscar nom. I know.
Hold on.
I know.
Wait, I thought first choice, Sleepless in Seattle. And I also saw for Big was James Brooks. So a lot of turndowns. Daniel Day-Lewis for Philadelphia. Tom Hanks. Thank you, everybody turning down roles.
Thank everybody. I mean, there's so many cases that like people just sneaking in there, getting those roles. But yeah, we cover a wide range of films, everything from The Matrix, Jurassic Park, Clueless, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Mortal Kombat. Very eclectic.
1995. Right? Isn't that a 1995 movie?
And keep it in theme. Keep it in theme with 1995. We just had John on talking To Die For, the other 1995 movie with Nicole Kidman, the black comedy by Gus Van Sant, and all the actors considered for that. And we just had a write-up on AV Club that just dropped last week about our episode on Alien. So
Congrats,
go check that out. Thank you guys. But yeah, I'm so thrilled. I can't believe you knew to pick Batman Forever for when you were having me on the movie of my youth.
You're welcome.
I agree with this. Let's segue into this. So let's segue into this because I feel the same way. When I knew this was part of the series, this is the movie. Now it is partly because my childhood, Jim Carrey has a big part of because I was young in that 1994 year where he does Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, and Ace Ventura. And this is 1995, the next year. So he is, by all accounts, the biggest movie star in the world because of the success of all 3 of his first films. And this film was on TV all the goddamn time when I was younger. And it's also, so I know the ending so well because I've seen the ending. Come on, Dave. I've seen the ending 12 times. I don't know if I've seen the beginning 12 times, but because I would turn it on halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, I would watch till the end. So talk to me. So you've seen this movie a lot in your youth, Jeff.
So many times. I don't remember if I saw this in theaters. I remember seeing Batman and Robin in theaters. I remember seeing that skydiving from the air nonsense after, Ice to Meet You. But this was one that I saw so many times. It is probably, Jim Carrey. For me,
chill out.
Oh, chill out, man. The trifecta, for me, is the trifecta of this, The Mask, and Liar Liar were the three big Jim Carrey movies that for me I watched constantly on loop growing up. I don't know what it was about this film, but I loved it. I mean, it's definitely more geared towards kids than the Tim Burton ones were, which certainly helps when you're 8 years old and it's not too terrifying, because it's just it's crazy that this movie is more of a cartoon than Batman the Animated Series. I don't necessarily mean that as a bad thing, but it absolutely is.
Dave's hand is on the buzzer right now.
My finger is hovering right now. The buzzer. I'm like, ooh, that was close.
Ooh, I'm just sneaking by.
Jeff, do you need to set up
our Jeff? No. We're all our Jeff. Do I need to set up this movie? Okay, so
did you say the plot? Did you say the plot already? I can't remember.
No,
there was a plot?
I did not. Okay, so this is number 3.
Dave loves this movie.
So
this is his favorite movie.
Okay, so honestly, it's a story of two villains. So you got Batman must battle former District Attorney Harvey Dent, who is now Two-Face, also played by Tommy Lee Jones, and Edward Nygma, the Riddler, played by Jim Carrey, with the help from an amorous psychologist and a young circus acrobat who becomes his sidekick, Robin. I actually thought when they said with help from, I thought they were going to go Nicole Kidman here. So anyway, it's Batman versus two villain. This movie definitely has the two villain problem. Jeff, back to you. You just rewatched this. This is a movie of your youth. Did you realize that it would be a movie that soon people would talk about on a redemption segment of their podcast, or was it really that bad? Did you know? When did you know? Did you know it in this rewatch, or did you know it sooner?
Well, it wasn't quite like I was wondering, is it 7 or Apollo 13 that's the redemption movie? Because clearly it can't be Batman Forever.
Buzz that shit. Get the fuck out of here. Get out.
I do want to pause, though, because the way you did describe that, Jeff, was an amorous psychologist and an acrobat that becomes Robin. That did
different.
Make it sound like that's all one person, which would be infinitely better. Infinitely better if Chris O'Donnell.
Why did Robin go to school if he just wants to join the family?
This movie's got a couple. This movie does have a couple problems. It is still an incredible film from my youth, but one, the fact that they booted Billy D. Williams as Harvey.
Not cool.
He'd been Harvey. I mean, he was waiting for the chance. But also, Chris O'Donnell and Val Kilmer clearly want to fuck this entire film, and they just let him kiss, let him make out, because Chris O'Donnell's pretending to play what? I think he's supposed to be college age. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
My foot.
No, we can. Yeah,
when Chris O'Donnell's like, when he's like, I'm gonna go out here, I'm gonna do it, and they're in the back cave, and Val Kilmer has his shirt off, and Chris O'Donnell's like, who's gonna stop me? And Batman's like, I'll stop you. I was like, hit the funk music.
I'll stop you.
Lower the drapes, baby.
I get this pig
These guys are about to. One of them is about to enter butt first, as Jeff would say, into frame.
That is a plus from Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton, love Michael Keaton, but that was all padding in that suit. Val Kilmer got in some shape for this film. I mean, honestly, give us some more bare-chested Batman. He worked on it, people.
He has the nipple. This suit had nipples.
That was just him. That was his Val's pokey nipples going right through that rubber.
That was actually a design choice because they wanted to base it on basically the Greek statues.
Now Val Kilmer has lost that shape in years since, but once was enough.
Decades since.
I wrote that this was Chris O'Donnell's audition for Moulin Rouge, but the part went to Nicole Kidman. Would you agree with that? Chris O'Donnell was the Flying Willenda. No, I forget what his name was in the movie, but he was basically based on the Flying Willenda family, and he was a circus acrobat who apparently took a bomb to the roof. It doesn't matter. This movie was fun. It was a cartoon. I guess it was sitcom-y. It was colorful. I have no idea what the fuck was going on in a lot of these scenes. I was in the middle of the scene and I went, "Where are we?" in half of these.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, Jeff, where I thought it was really fun.
So I think Dave and I will cheers to this. I am hardcore about number 1 and 2. I am a Tim Burton Batman fan. Those movies sculpted my outlook on life. I love those movies. So I had a tough time with this one, mostly just out of the aesthetic difference between Tim Burton's style, who produced this, and Joel Schumacher, who, give it up to Joel. We'll pour one out for that guy. He passed this past year. Well done, Joel Schumacher. I was frustrated with this movie my entire childhood, and then I had a blast on this rewatch, you guys. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm going to have to retreat. This movie, and Joel Schumacher's take, he clearly went into the room and he said, I am going to make the 1960s show come to life in the movie.
Exactly.
It had the same feel, the absurdity, that it went beyond comical. Because, Burton has that ability to take Burton's style, which is not realistic, and set it with a tone that is supposed to be taken as though it was realism. This is not realism for one fucking second, right? Where no one is under the illusion that Gotham actually looks like this, that people actually talk to each other like that those guys aren't fucking each other as soon as they take their suits off. We know something's up. We know the style is weird. And this was the first time it didn't turn me off the whole time. I still was able to enjoy the story. I just didn't take it seriously. I wasn't expecting to have a dramatic experience the way I was with the first two, especially the second one, which, it is a pretty stark change from Batman Returns. Which is super dark, very dramatic, and again, aside from all the production
nightmare-inducing. That is nightmare-inducing.
Yeah, I mean, it is grounded. This is not grounded. This is something else, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like walking out your front door and the fucking floor is missing.
All right, Dave, go off, motherfucker. I want to hear why do you hate this movie so much?
Hold on. Maybe the floor isn't missing, but it is full of boiling acid. As
that guy, everything.
I enjoy the movie, but that guy is one of the worst actors I've ever seen.
That man has the greatest. That is the greatest day player of all time.
He's the feet are melting. Stop giving him lines. He's the most fucking annoying character ever.
Oh my god!
I may as well just hold this.
It's boiling acid.
They could have easily said one more and less. That's all they needed to say.
I really enjoyed. I kind of
scene.
enjoyed watching Val Kilmer in the 100 Impossibly Unbelievable Things in the first 5 minutes. That was the official title. It wouldn't fit on the poster. That was too wordy. So
did you like his very first line? Did you like the very first line? What's the first line of this movie? I'll get drive-through.
Yeah.
Well, the first line is whatever Alfred's. Oh, yeah, sandwich, sir.
Yeah.
Also, how do you name this movie Batman Forever, and the fourth one is Batman and Robin? This should be Batman and Robin, and then the fourth one you do Batman number 4 ever.
Is
a strike.
Yeah.
Is a strike.
Fast and Furious stuff going on there.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
I don't know.
Bat and the Furious.
I will say there's a couple of things I will say. Tommy Lee Jones steals this movie for me because I did not. When I first saw this in cinemas, I did not see him coming. I was like, Tommy Lee Jones is doing Two-Face, and he just fucking owned it. And I did not know Tommy Lee Jones was capable of going to that level. Like it was a choice. It was a really
Jeff didn't like it.
It was really different to
it
was really different to what you normally see him doing. The editing though is what really kills me in this movie. It kills the entire fucking thing. There was a whole other scene originally before the opening sequence that they just cut out, and it showed like the investigative side a little bit more of the Batman. And they cut it and just went to this campy fucking action sequence to open the movie. And I'm sorry, it opens weak, slowly tries to climb out of the toilet and just doesn't get there.
It's definitely not as good as the first two. Do you guys agree with that, or are you guys arguing?
I agree with that. Yeah.
Are you arguing for Batman Forever over the Tim Burtons?
I'm certainly not. I do think it's definitely a step down from the previous two. I mean, I loved it as a kid. I do think it is more geared to a younger audience than those first two. For me, I think the problem is with the villains. I think Tommy Lee Jones got hindered by, he feels like he's doing Joker 2.0. It feels like he's like, oh, you got my boy Jack Nicholson, fellow Academy Award winner, doing this. I can do. Okay, great. This isn't beneath me to do this, but it feels like there's only a few moments where I feel like he's actually doing a like split personality performance where it's like, and now I'm like very calm and collected, and now I'm a cartoon. He does that cartoon laugh so often, and I wonder if he saw what Jim Carrey was doing and he was like, fuck, let me go full tilt boogie then, because I don't know, I'm gonna look like I'm doing like Pinter against whatever this is that's happening.
Christ.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually with both of you, Dave and Jeff, because yes, he came in with some really fucking strong choices for sure. But then he realized that Jim Carrey's presence was something because he never was Harvey Dent. He was always the laughing sidekick. And in fact, that was the problem with the two villain part of this, is that the two villains became a team and they weren't one identity. They were Edward Nygma with Two-Face's endorsement, if that makes sense. Like Edward, he became that like second character, like the second part of it. If he did the Two-Face thing and then he countered it with a Harvey Dent that was grounded, John, I think that could have been something really, really, really special. But Jim Carrey stole the movie for better or worse, and apparently for worse for him, because my line here is, I don't know if you saw anything. Apparently Tommy Lee Jones hated working with Jim Carrey, and he said, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery." I think Jim Carrey was fucking with him, and that's the line that I wrote down. I cannot sanction your buffoonery.
I wish that had made it in the edit. One thing I will go, the one good thing that came out of it was like Jim Carrey. No, if I mean, this is just a personal choice, and I've thought about it a lot. If I was directing Jim Carrey, I would have pulled him back as much as possible, because there's some really subtle things that he does with the character that you see. He had
moments where he was really subtle.
That you see, and then he goes over the top, and you lose it, and it's like everyone's trying to be, heightened and stuff. But if he pulled it back, I think it would have been a lot more sinister, and it would have had a lot more effect, because in Gotham, the series Gotham, Corey Michael Smith ended up playing the Riddler. And I actually sat forward in a chair for a second, because there's one scene where he gets told something he doesn't like in Batman Forever, and you see Jim Carrey react, and I'm like, holy fuck, like Corey Michael Smith is like channeling subdued Jim Carrey for this role, because like the reaction literally was the same. And there's so many times where you see like what he took from, I think was probably inspired a little bit from this performance, but he grounded it, and it works so much better than what Jim Carrey did in this film.
Right. Although the most overtop thing in the movie, though, was actually not Jim Carrey. It was Chris O'Donnell's laundry sequence. What the fuck was that? I did not remember that. He was like, he was like, "Alfred, I don't need anybody waiting on me." And then he takes the laundry out of the dryer and he like spins it in the air and catches
the rock
it on a
music,
fucking mop.
the music underneath it.
That was actually the most over the top thing. Wait. Let me send it back to
Alfred's
Jeff.
like,
Let me send it back to Jeff though, because there's something. Alfred was sitting there and was like, "Oh, I don't need to take care of you. You got
the
this all under
deviant art
control."
community was ready to make that threesome of Batman, Robin, and Alfred. Don't even worry about it.
You know your movie is camp when you've turned Alfred.
Look, we're off the rails. I'm going to kick it back to Jeff with this, because long story short, Batman has a two villain problem. It is not anybody who has seen The Dark Knight and that's their idea of Batman. That comes from the Tim Burton like idea of that dark, like haunting, whatever mythology you want. This is it's camp to the point where the grounded stuff doesn't solidify like anything in any sense of reality. So it's basically Batman against these two villains, and that's that. But the things that you remember from this movie are the lines, and most of those lines are Jim Carrey's, and I don't think there's any question about that. It's not Drew Barrymore, it's not Debbie Mazar, it's not Nicole Kidman. There's so many people in this. It's riddle me this, riddle me that, who's afraid of the big black bat, etc. So Jeff, even though this is not going to give you nightmares the way that the other two is going to give you them, are the lines enough to be like, let's say, this is random, but like a Happy Gilmore, where it's like, I don't know what this, like the lines, I go to hear the rewatchable lines. Is it enough to give it a fun rewatch? Yeah, exactly. Is it enough? Because the lines are really memorable. I can't forget these lines, whereas I don't remember any lines from the first two Batman movies.
I did find Joygasm and Spank Me very memorable.
Okay.
As you do.
You could buzz me for that, because I thought that's when I was like completely out of it, where I was like, no, why would you? Because I think this is why I would always go back to The Mask and Liar Liar, is because he's given, within the context of the script, he's given reins. Because in The Mask, he's like Stanley Ipkiss. So he's purposely like, okay, here I'm a human being, or at least like the more whatever milquetoast guy, and then the mask is full id. And Liar Liar, it's him fighting against that id, whereas this, it's just open id. And that was never my favorite Jim Carrey, when it's just you open up the valve and it's just there's nothing tempering it or keeping it down. Because to me, it just really feels like you're just improvising, and it's like Robin Williams, who was an incredible comedic performer, but like, letting him do Genie, and it's like the poor sound engineer that had to edit that down to 20 minutes when it was 18 hours. Him just like, just like, now I'm a hot dog.
Robin, we've been in the studio for 3 days. Stop doing coke.
You gave him a week and a pound of coke. You could make a movie out of anything he said. Like,
Man, I don't think Jim Carrey even needed coke. I feel like you could just, if you got like, if he gave blood, you could just use that and you would get high off it of 1985 era Jim Carrey. So I think that he just needed
pretty much
Joel
described the
Schumacher
plot of
needed
True
to
Blood.
rein him in.
Yeah, I think you guys are right.
Even him before he becomes full blown Riddler, when he's like in his whole like Jeffrey Dahmer Hinkley look,
he cleans up really nice. He cleans up really nice.
He really does. Well, once he's literally just doing a Val Kilmer play, when he's got the Val Kilmer haircut and glasses.
But you're saying Ed Enigma is too much too. I feel like when he's
even
the first scene.
I mean, surfs up Big Kahuna to the poor Ed Begley Jr. Even then, it's like, you know, it'd be one thing if he like, oh, now he's snapped and now he's going completely bananas. But right from the jump, he's just so over the top, and that really, to me, it's him specifically why this is more of a cartoon than Batman the Animated Series. And if he was more, sure, please. Yeah. But I wonder if he was either more reined in, or if you had someone else in that role, if everyone else could have breathed a little more, because it does dominate the film so much in a way that I do think does hinder it slightly.
I do too. I think he, if they would have gone, if Tim Burton would have directed this and cast Kevin Spacey as the Riddler, this movie would be very different.
Well, we wouldn't be watching it anymore.
Yeah, that's true. But something like that about the reined in, I agree with what you guys are saying, but I also feel like just the script in general, unlike the first two and definitely unlike Nolan's, again, it feels like that TV show, not just in tone, but it also feels episodic. So I don't feel like I learned anything about Batman in this one. This installment didn't move Batman's story, his personal demons, forward at all. Nothing changed for him in this except for Robin. So we didn't get to see him deal with a new struggle in the, with whatever he's been dealing with big picture wise. Whereas in the first two, you did get it. They abandoned it with this one. They abandoned it with Batman and Robin. Jesus, sorry, Dave. Just hit my microphone really hard. And then Nolan picks it up and tries to tell very specific personal stories, which again, kind of to the theme of what we've been talking about with 7 and Apollo 13. There was zero humanity in this movie. It was just clowns. I thought, and I'm going to throw Tommy Lee in there too. I felt like everybody was clowning it up. So Val Kilmer I don't really have an opinion on him as Batman because I felt like he was dominated by the villains and whatever they were trying to do with the relationship between Batman and Robin, it wasn't grounded either. And because I had no point of view from Batman up until the point I met Robin, I don't really feel like I had enough to say about Robin because I didn't know how Batman felt about anything until, when Robin came inside. They didn't give me a single intimate moment with him before that happened.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Do you agree with that?
Let's take a minute to talk about the supporting actors in this, because like Val Kilmer and
why
Nicole
is Drew Barrymore in this movie?
This was before she was the Drew.
Why the fuck is she in this movie?
She just come off Poison Ivy.
18.
Yeah. No, but like I want to talk about the supporting actors, Val Kilmer and Nicole Kidman.
Seriously, dude.
Which one of the 5 writers on this film was writing their fucking dialogue? I'm sorry.
Honestly,
there are 5 writers.
Really. No,
I will say though,
I want them punished. I want them punished. Who was writing the dialogue for that? It was.
You wanted the Punisher. You wanted the Punisher to come in. Props to this film though. Is this the only time that Batman ever goes to therapy? Because that is, I don't think it's successful, but I do think that's an element that, like, yes, this is a man that is in desperate need of therapy. Yeah. And it feels like he starts to I'm going to give up being Batman. I don't know what then makes him just being like, oh no, I'm cool now that I've got my
Does it
Robin
count if the only reason he went was trying to bang the therapist?
Ooh, good point.
It does count.
In Batman world, it does.
It does count. I did Batman Forever in New Jersey.
I did feel like Val Kilmer seemed more comfortable with Bruce Wayne than Batman when he was playing the role.
Yeah. Well, again, though, I mean, I feel like the line between, I know this is going to get very specific, but like that scene I was making fun of when he's like, he goes into the shower way too quickly. He comes out of that shower lightning speed. Remember when he parks his car and Chris O'Donnell's waiting for him and he walks through the room and he's totally undressed with a towel around his neck like he just took a shower. Anyway, in the first 2 and in Nolan's movies, there is at least one scene in each of them where you get to see Batman with his mask off, but he's still caped up. He's still got his costume on. And you kind of get to see him sitting in conflict where like it doesn't quite line up. And he usually has some kind of exchange in the second or climax of the second act.
Did he use the Bat
where
computer
he is struggling
once?
with something.
Did he use the Bat computer once during this movie?
No. He didn't do any of his usual things. He had his gadgets on his person, but they never showed
He
that
didn't
stuff.
need the computer. He was too busy using his deductive reasoning to figure out the brilliant riddle of Mr. E.
Oh, you mean his
what
penis?
Was the point? What was the point
Yeah.
of all the riddles to be like, oh, it's Mr. A, Mr. E enigma? It did it was like, who cares? It doesn't matter. I was like, you didn't real. I didn't realize he didn't know it was enigma at that point.
Yes. Okay, so now, when did I'm trying to remember when the cartoon started, the one that we've kind of been poking fun of, the Dark Knight cartoon. I was definitely a child still, so I feel like it was around the early 90s.
92, I think, was Batman the Animated Series? The one with Mark Hamill, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, so like this movie, again, Tim Burton did a good job, I think, of bringing Batman back to the front of the story, because even in the 60s show, like, Batman kind of became... Adam West eventually started playing him because it was so episodic. Like, you knew what to expect. So he kind of was just the Batman in the context of Justice League and the hero of Gotham. Burton resurrected him as an interesting, conflicted protagonist, an anti-hero. And then the cartoon took it to a whole other level. It's the Dark Knight cartoon, and he is at the center of all of it, struggling with emotions all over the place. And I do feel like this movie like really just dropped the ball on that part of it. It became about a lot of the other things. It became about all the people around him, the villains, which is just like the 60s TV show. It became about the villains, and it became about the spectacle. And I didn't feel anything. And like anyone who loves Batman, I love Batman. I think a lot of people love Batman. It's that character, as we've talked about before on the show, is the best superhero of all time because of his natural conflict. He's not Superman. He doesn't have a lot of the luxuries. He's not a superhero. He's a human. He's a fucked up human. And I don't think even though you're right, Jeff, he did go to therapy, but he seemed extremely cool, calm, and collected. Even when he was looking at that ink blot, the Warshot test, he was like, oh, bats. And I was like, all right, cool. They gave us like one little moment of that because he didn't have a single moment of conflict in front of her or alone. I don't know.
There's something about starting a movie in action, which is what this did. And it set up a very green, very strange world. That it's hard. You have to ground it soon so that we know what our reality is. Because all of a sudden there's the head of the Statue of Liberty. So I guess we're in New York City, but maybe
with Gotham
maybe
written
that's
on it, just so you know where you are.
But maybe that's just a cheap. But maybe that's just the cheap Planet of the Apes reference. So it's like even his home. Where is his fucking home in relation to the city? Chris O'Donnell steals the Batmobile and then goes to the city, but how far did he have to drive to get there? These things might not seem like they matter, and maybe in a sitcom they yada yada those kinds of things, but we'd be in action. There was the one time where there's the bat signal and then he shows up and then there's Two-Face. I don't want to I hesitate to go to like the Dark Knight, but just as a reference, like we would never just happen upon Heath Ledger's Joker. Like, to get there is a journey, and then you get there and he's the climax of this journey that you have to confront. All of a sudden now we're in a battle with Two-Face in the middle of nowhere that I don't know anything about. How did we get there? And it's just like, I'm with you all that there's some really fun moments in this. There's some really like there is some good scene work, but it's just grounded in nothing, and that's just really too bad. Val Kilmer really had no chance. Val Kilmer had no chance, right? And he still could have gotten another movie. He could have done the George Clooney movie next, but he had no chance of ever competing with Michael Keaton with what he was given.
It's just it's the trap. Go ahead. Go, Jeff.
I was going to say, do you think that would have been different? Because if they had not bought out Billy D. Williams' contract, if they'd kept him on as Harvey Dent, they probably would have, the beginning would have been like him becoming Two-Face. Or they would have done it like they do, where it's like the news report where you're like, well, you don't need to see how he became Two-Face. Now he's suddenly Two-Face.
To be honest, I talked up that at the beginning, the performance there, and I would be just as happy seeing Billy D. Williams do that. Because I think he would have brought something really cool to the party as well.
And then you're seeing your villain is like from previous films. It's not just like suddenly dropping in, where even though it's the same character, it doesn't feel like, oh, we've recast it, but this is the same character you've seen in these previous films from Tim Burton. Now you're seeing him, but played by Tommy Lee Jones. It feels like a completely brand new, half Ivan Ooze.
It's almost like DC doesn't know how to franchise or something.
Look, here's the deal. These superhero movies, I think they only really work for across the board, not just hardcore fans. when they're not only fun. And I feel like this one had no goal other than fun time in the theater, eat your popcorn, look at these lights, listen to Jim Carrey. It never transcended anything past that. So, I probably wouldn't have rewatched this movie had we not done that. Again, I had a decent rewatch, but it did not affect me emotionally. And like, I don't care if they're wearing capes and a mask. I want to be affected emotionally by anything I commit to.
My biggest takeaway from this movie was those side-facing wheels on the Batmobile would be perfect for New York City parking.
That's a great point. Oh no! How could you buzz that? Come on, forget parallel parking, a thing of the past. Now we're talking, guys.
Oh my gosh. Well, friends,
by sea or by air.
We could talk about this forever, and especially since we have our other guests, we almost seem like we want to go on and just continue this conversation. But unfortunately, this is segment 3 in our podcast, so we have to wrap it up. Jeff, thank you for getting drunk for this quick, tiny little segment. So go ahead, another pleasure. Plug. I know you recently did Alien. Any other movies that you just talked about, or anything you want to plug going forward?
Some recent episodes. Yeah, we did Alien, Silence of the Lambs, Hitchcock's Psycho, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and of course To Die For with John Say. Yeah.
Hey. And shall we say that you do this with your wife, who, by the way, I know your wife. I did an acting class with Amy Jo, and our friend Katie that we went to college with was Ariel in The Little Mermaid, and I believe Amy Jo was Ursula in Arkansas.
She sure was. Amazing. So, amazing.
But yeah,
awesome. Cool.
Wow. All we need is Kevin Bacon.
All
we need is guests, and then I have a connection to everybody in Apollo 13. Oh my God,
Bacon as King Triton in Little Mermaid.
Jeff, what are your? Do you have any handles? Do you have your follow stuff? Do you have any?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at And Almost Starring. Every Saturday we say what film we're doing next. Every Friday, Amy Jo runs an Instagram game where you can try and guess. She'll drop some clues and you can try and figure out what film we'll be doing. Check us out there. And thanks so much again. Thanks so much for having me. This has been a blast. Such a joy to rewatch Batman Forever and probably never rewatch it again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's Buzz for lying.
Awesome. That's it.